The fork in my hand felt heavier than it should have. Crystal chandeliers threw soft light across my mother's best china while my brother Cade sat across from me, wearing that smile. The one that said he'd already won before anyone realized there was a game. $4,300, he said, pushing his dessert plate away like a man dismissing paperwork. Mia's prom dress. Vintage, custom-fitted. You'll send it tonight, right, Dorian? I set the fork down slowly. The sound of silver on porcelain seemed too loud in a room built for whispers and deals. My mother, Beatrice, adjusted her pearls, the expensive ones she wore when she needed witnesses. Cade's always been so good with his daughter. It's what family does, sweetheart. Across the table, my father Marcel watched me with eyes that calculated faster than they felt. Hail men take care of their own, he said. Not a suggestion. A closing argument. I'd sat at this table 1,000 times. Same chairs. Same expectations. Different invoices. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. No, I said. The word dropped like a stone in still water. Kate's smile cracked at the edges. What do you mean, no? I mean she can earn it. Get a part-time job. Babysit. Mow lawns. Something that teaches her money isn't magic. My mother's hand went to her throat. Dorian, this is family. We don't make children work for special occasions. You made me work for everything, I said quietly. Cade borrowed 20 grand for a car I helped him pick out with my own savings. You congratulated yourself on teaching him responsibility. Where was mine? Cade leaned forward, his voice rising. You're being cheap. For someone who loves preaching about work ethic, you're awfully tight with your wallet. My father's chair creaked as he shifted forward. This isn't about the dress. This is about respect. About knowing your place in this family. My place. Something hot, an old rose in my chest. The place where I fix your permits at 2 in the morning? The place where my name on a contract makes your deals go through? That place. Beatrice's voice went cold and sharp. Pay for the dress, Dorian, or be thrown out of this family. Your choice. The room held its breath. I pulled out my phone. The screen glowed blue in the candlelight. My thumb moved across familiar accounts, the ones I'd managed for years because someone had to keep the gears turning while everyone else posed for cameras. Transfer to PR firm. Cancel. Automatic payment to social media manager. Cancel. Retainer for the influencer who made mom look charitable. Cancel. Vendor bonds I'd personally guaranteed. Cancel. Dinner account for client entertainment. Cancel. Every tap felt like cutting a string. Every string held up something that glittered, but had no foundation. What are you doing? Cade's voice cracked. You gave me a choice, I said, still scrolling, still canceling. I'm choosing me. My mother stood so fast her chair scraped. Dorian Hale, you stop that right now. I'm done being your bank account with a heartbeat. Cancel. 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 My father's face went from red to pale. You're making a mistake. Everything we built. Everything I built. I corrected. You just put your name on it. I stood. The napkin fell from my lap like a white flag I'd never waved. Beatrice's voice followed me toward the door, shaking with something between rage and panic. You'll regret this, Dorian. You'll come crawling back. I stopped at the threshold, turned, looked at the 3 of them framed by inherited silver and borrowed grace. You asked me to choose, I said. I choose me. The front door closed behind me with a sound like an ending. My phone started buzzing before I reached my car. What would you do if your family made you choose between your dignity and their approval? I was 8 years old the first time I understood that love in the Hale house came with a price tag. My father stood in his study, phone pressed to his ear, closing a deal that would buy our 3rd vacation home. Through the crack in the door, I watched him smile, the kind that never reached his eyes. When he hung up, he saw me there. Dorian, he said, not unkindly. Come here. I stepped inside. The room smelled like leather and old money. You want to be successful? He asked. I nodded because 8-year-olds don't know better. Then remember this. People are transactions. Every relationship is an exchange. You give, you get. You stop giving, you're worthless. He ruffled my hair. Your brother understands this naturally. You'll have to learn it. I didn't tell him I'd built a model house from scraps in the garage. Didn't mention the hours I'd spent measuring angles and testing if cardboard walls could hold weight. Because I already knew, Kay got praised for showing up. I got noticed for being useful. My mother was worse in softer ways. She taught me that appearances were armor. People don't remember what you are, she'd say, applying lipstick before parent-teacher conferences. They remember what you look like. At 10, I won a school architecture contest. My design beat 60 other kids. I ran home with the certificate, breathless and proud. That's nice, honey, Mom said, glancing up from her magazine. Did anyone important see it? The judges. I mean anyone with connections. You need to think bigger, Dorian. Cade walked in right then, holding a B- test. I almost got a B, he announced. My parents erupted in celebration. Ice cream. Movie night. The works. I stood there holding my first-place certificate like a receipt for something nobody wanted. By 16, I'd learned to disappear. I worked after school at a hardware store, saved every dollar, taught myself drafting software from library books. Kate got a car for his birthday. I got a handshake and a reminder that hard work builds character. One night, I overheard them talking in the kitchen. My door was cracked. Their voices carried. Dorian's too serious, my father said. He'll make a decent manager one day. Keep the books straight. And Cade, my mother asked. Cade's got charisma. He's the face of the business. The future. I sat in the dark, staring at the model house on my desk, the one I'd spent months perfecting. Every joint fitted right. Every angle true. I whispered into the silence. One day I'll build a home that won't collapse under greed. The model caught moonlight through my window. It looked stronger than anything in our actual house. Do you think some people are just born to be used by their family? 24 years and a degree in architecture later, I had my answer. I'd built something they couldn't take credit for. My firm was small. 4 employees, modest projects, a reputation for treating contractors like humans instead of line items. We designed affordable housing, renovated churches, built playgrounds that wouldn't rust in 3 years. I worked 70-hour weeks not because I had to, but because the work meant something. Every blueprint was a promise kept. Every completed project proved that buildings could be honest. My phone buzzed during a site inspection. Mom's name lit up the screen. Dorian, sweetheart. Family dinner Friday. Your father insists. I wiped concrete dust from my hands. I'm busy, Mom. It's important. For tradition. Her voice had that edge, the one that meant refusal would cost me later. I should have said no. Should have recognized the setup. But some stupid part of me still hoped they'd surprise me. That maybe this time would be different. What time? I asked. 7 sharp. Don't be late. The call ended before I could ask why. My assistant, Maria, raised an eyebrow. Your family? Yeah. You look like someone just invited you to your own funeral. I laughed, but it felt hollow. That's basically every Hale family dinner. Thursday night, Cade texted me. Don't be late tomorrow. It's important. No context. No warmth. Just a command disguised as a reminder. I stared at my apartment, small, clean mine. Every piece of furniture bought with money I'd earned. No strings. No receipts to repay. The contrast between this space and my parents' mansion felt like the difference between breathing and drowning. Friday arrived too fast. I drove across town watching the houses get bigger, the lawns more manicured, the gates more aggressive. By the time I pulled up to the Hale estate, my jaw ached from clenching. The mansion rose above me, all glass and sharp angles and cold ambition. I'd helped design the East Wing when I was 25. My father never mentioned my name when reporters asked about it. I stood at the front door, hand hovering over the bell. Behind me, the city sprawled out in every direction. Somewhere in those streets were buildings I'd helped create. Places where families lived and kids played, and people existed without performing. I pressed the bell. Somewhere inside, I heard my mother's laughter. Practiced.
Perfect.
Poison. Have you ever walked into a room and known you were about to be ambushed? The dining room looked like a movie set. Candles flickered. Wine breathed in crystal decanters. My mother had pulled out the china we used when appearances mattered more than appetites. Kate sat across from me wearing confidence, like cologne. Dad anchored the head of the table, already 3 drinks in. Mom floated between kitchen and dining room, orchestrating the performance. "Isn't this lovely?" she sang. All of us together. We talked about nothing for 40 minutes. Weather. Stock prices. A charity gala Mom was planning. Every word felt like a card being placed on a house we all knew would collapse. Dessert arrived. Chocolate something with gold leaf, because subtle wasn't in my mother's vocabulary. That's when Cade made his move. He pushed his plate aside and leaned forward, elbows on the table like a man about to ask a favor he'd already decided was owed. "Dorian, I need your help with something." Here it comes, I thought. Mia's prom is next month. She found the perfect dress. Vintage, custom-fitted, designer. He said it like he was describing a car. $4,300. I set my fork down carefully. That's a lot for a dress. "It's prom." He shrugged. "It's special. You'll send the money tonight, right?" Not a question. An assumption. My mother materialized beside Cade's chair, hand on his shoulder. Cade's always been so devoted to his daughter. It's what good fathers do. What family does. My father swirled his wine, watching me over the rim. "Hail men take care of their own, Dorian. It's not complicated." The room waited. I thought about every time I'd bent. Every favor. Every check. Every moment I'd swallowed my dignity because keeping peace was easier than defending boundaries. "No," I said. The word landed like a slap. Cade blinked.
What?
"She can earn it. Babysit.
Tutor.
Work retail. Something that teaches her the value of money." "You're joking." Cade's smile evaporated. "I'm not." My mother's voice hardened. "Dorian, this is family. We don't make children work for." "You made me work for everything," I interrupted. "Cade borrowed 20 grand for a car 5 years ago. I drove him to the dealership using my savings. Nobody said thank you. Nobody taught him responsibility. You just congratulated yourselves on being generous." "That's different," Dad said.
How?
"Because it is." His voice dropped to the tone that had closed business deals and crushed competitors. "This isn't about money, son. It's about respect. About knowing your place." Something snapped inside me. Quiet but final, like a cable reaching its limit. My place. The one where I fix your permits at midnight? Where my name gets your contracts approved. That place. Beatrice's hands trembled. "You're being selfish." "Pay for the dress," my father said slowly, "or there will be consequences." My mother stepped closer, her face tight. "Pay up, Dorian, or be thrown out of this family. Your choice." The threat hung in the air like smoke. I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app I'd managed for them for years. The accounts I'd organized. The transfers I'd automated. The financial architecture holding up their empire of appearances. My thumb moved. "Cancel." "What are you doing?" Cade's voice cracked. "Cancel." "Dorian, stop," my mother started. "Cancel. Cancel. Cancel. Every automatic transfer. Every retainer. Every vendor payment. Every PR contract. Every ounce of grease that kept their machine running. Stop that right now." Beatrice shrieked. My father stood, face purple. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said, still tapping. "I'm correcting one." The final cancellation went through. I looked up at 3 faces twisted between rage and disbelief. "You gave me a choice," I said quietly. "I choose me." I stood, walked toward the door. "You'll regret this," my mother screamed. I paused at the threshold. Turned. Looked at them one last time. "You asked me to choose," I said. "I choose me." The door closed behind me. By the time I reached my car, my phone was already exploding with notifications. Would you have pressed cancel, or would fear have stopped you? The messages started before dawn. "Dorian, undo this immediately." My father's voice on voicemail, trying to sound authoritative, but landing on desperate. You've ruined us. My mother's text, followed by 15 heart emojis that felt more like tiny knives. Cade called 6 times in an hour. I let them all go to voicemail. On the 7th, I answered. You'll make us homeless, he shouted. You'll destroy everything Dad built. Dad built it on shortcuts and my silence, I said. Neither are structural. You're insane. I hung up. I made coffee. Showered. Drove to my office like it was any other Friday. But my inbox told a different story. Hale Development's vendor bonds had defaulted. 3 permits I'd personally greased were now stalled in bureaucratic hell. My mother's PR firm sent a panicked email asking why their retainer bounced. The social media influencer who made my family look charitable posted a cryptic story about fake people with empty accounts. The empire was trembling, and I'd barely touched it. My assistant Maria knocked on my door around 10. You okay? You look different. I cut some people off. Good people or bad people? Family. She nodded slowly. Sometimes those are the same thing. By noon, the first article dropped. Hale Developments faces financial turbulence, son at center of controversy. They made me sound like a villain. The prodigal son who'd betrayed his blood. The ungrateful child who'd sabotaged success. I read it twice. Felt nothing. Because outside my window, the real world kept moving. A crew finished installing solar panels on a housing project I designed. A young couple walked past holding hands, heading toward the affordable apartment complex we'd helped build. Real work. Real impact. No headlines required.
My phone rang.
Unknown number. Mr. Hale? This is Jensen, from Apex Construction. We've worked with your family for years. I braced myself for the lecture. I wanted to thank you, he said. I blinked. For what? For paying us on time. Every time. For treating us like partners, not servants. Words getting around. If you're building something new, we want in. 3 more calls like that came before lunch. Contractors I'd insisted on paying fairly. Workers who remembered I'd learned their kids' names. People who'd noticed I didn't need a camera crew to show basic decency. By evening, the media circus was in full swing. My father went on a local news segment, tie perfectly knotted, voice dripping with wounded nobility. Family should come first, he said, staring into the camera like a prophet. My son has forgotten that, but we'll pray for him. The interviewer nodded sympathetically. I watched the clip from my couch, eating takeout that cost $8 and tasted better than any meal at that mansion. My phone buzzed. Maria again. Headline just dropped. You're trending. I opened the link. Family fortune falters. Silent son at center. The article painted me as calculating. Vengeful.
Cold.
I closed my laptop. Walked to my window. Watched the sun set over buildings I'd helped design. Structures that would outlast headlines and hurt feelings and hollow dynasties. My reflection stared back at me, and for the first time in 32 years, I recognized the man I saw. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Not revenge. Something better.
Repair.
When everything falls apart, do you rebuild the same way, or do you build something new? The reporter's question hung in the air between us like smoke. Is this revenge, Mr. Hale? We stood outside my office, camera crew hovering like vultures. 3 weeks had passed since I'd walked out of that dinner. 3 weeks of watching my family's empire crack, while my own work flourished in ways I'd never imagined. I looked at the reporter. Young. Hungry. Hoping for a soundbite that would go viral. No, I said quietly. It's repair. She blinked. Can you elaborate? My father gave me access to those accounts 5 years ago. He said it proved he trusted me. But trust isn't what you give someone when you need them to work for free. It's what you build when you treat people right. The camera kept rolling. I didn't destroy anything. I stopped funding a system that was already broken. That clip played on a loop for days. Some people called me a hero. Others said I was bitter. I was neither. I was just tired of being a supporting actor in someone else's performance. But the real story wasn't playing out on screens. It was happening in neighborhoods my family had forgotten existed. I'd started small. The first contract went to a housing project in South End, a neighborhood my father once called unprofitable. The residents needed repairs their slumlord wouldn't make. Leaking roofs, broken heating, stairs that buckled under weight. I hired local workers, paid them 20% above market rate, gave them benefits my father would have called unnecessary. Within a month, word spread. Contractors who'd been squeezed by Hale developments started calling me. Not for charity, for partnership. You treat people like they matter, one mason told me, hands still dusty from laying brick. That's rare. I didn't feel rare. I felt like I was doing what should have been normal. My office grew. 2 employees became 6. We took on projects that prioritized people over profit margins, community centers, playgrounds, affordable housing that actually looked like someone cared. Meanwhile, Hale Developments continued its slow collapse. Permits stalled. Partnerships dissolved. The magazine covers that once featured my parents now ran exposés about their business practices. One headline read, "Empire built on shortcuts finally catches up." I didn't celebrate. There's no joy in watching something fall when you know people will get hurt in the rubble. But I also didn't look away. My mother called one night, voice raw. "People are asking questions, Dorian, about how we treated workers, about the corners we cut." "Then answer them honestly," I said. "You don't understand what you've done." "I understand exactly what I've done. I stopped being complicit." She hung up. I sat in the dark of my apartment, listening to the city hum outside my window. Somewhere out there, a family was sleeping in a home with a roof that wouldn't leak because we'd fixed it right. A kid was playing on a playground that wouldn't collapse because we'd used proper materials. That was my answer. Not to a reporter's question, but to the one I'd been asking myself since I was 8 years old. What does it mean to build something that lasts? It means building for people, not applause. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Mr. Hale?" A woman's voice, shaking. "This is Beatrice Hale. Your father collapsed. When the people who hurt you need you most, do you walk away or show up anyway?" The hospital smelled like bleach and desperation. I stood in the parking lot for 10 minutes, keys in hand, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed at me to drive away, to let them face this alone the way they'd made me face everything alone. But I went inside anyway. Not because they deserved it, because I refused to become them. My mother sat in the waiting room, makeup smeared, pearls absent. She looked smaller without her armor. "You came," she whispered. "What happened?" "Stress. The doctors say it's his heart." Her voice cracked. "They're running tests." I sat 2 chairs away, close enough to be present, far enough to protect myself. We didn't speak for an hour. Just sat there listening to machines beep and nurses page doctors and families whisper prayers that probably wouldn't be answered. Finally, a doctor emerged. "He's stable. You can see him." My mother stood, then looked at me. "Will you come?" I should have said no. Should have let her face the man she'd enabled alone. But I followed her down the hallway anyway. My father lay in bed, tubes running from his arms, monitors tracking rhythms he'd spent a lifetime ignoring. He looked old, fragile, human in ways I'd never seen him. His eyes opened when I entered. Recognition flickered, followed by something that might have been shame. "Why did you come?" His voice was gravel and exhaustion. "Because I'm not you," I said. He closed his eyes. A single tear tracked down his temple. My mother sobbed quietly in the corner. No performance this time. Just raw grief for a life spent chasing the wrong things. I stayed for 20 minutes. Didn't say much. Didn't need to. Sometimes presence is the only answer that matters. When I left, the nurse stopped me. "The bills." "I'll handle it," I said. Anonymously. She nodded, understanding more than I'd said. Over the next 3 weeks, I visited every day. Not for them. For me. Because bitterness is a poison that kills the person carrying it, and I'd spent too many years swallowing their toxins. My father grew stronger. Started talking again. Told stories I'd never heard. About his childhood, his first construction job, a woman in Marseille he loved before he chose ambition over everything else. "I used you," he said one evening, monitors beeping steady. "Like a tool. Like something I could discard when I was done." I didn't contradict him. "Forgive me," he whispered. "Please." Forgiveness isn't a light switch. You can't just flip it on because someone asks. It's a process. A choice you make every day to not let hate define you. "I'm working on it," I said. He nodded. Understood that was the best I could offer. A week later, the doctors cleared him to go home. My mother arranged transport. Cade showed up for the first time, looking uncomfortable in his own guilt. I helped my father into the wheelchair. He gripped my hand, weak but genuine. "You're stronger than I ever was," he said. "No," I replied. "I just learned different lessons." That night, a courier delivered an envelope to my apartment. Thick paper. My father's handwriting on the front. "My son." I stared at it for an hour before opening it. Some letters change everything. "Are you ready for what comes next?" The letter sat on my kitchen table for 3 days before I opened it. Not because I was afraid of what it said. Because once I read it, I couldn't unread it. And some truths require preparation. On the 4th day, I made coffee, sat down, and broke the seal. "Dorian, if you're reading this, I'm either dying or dead. Either way, I'm out of time for cowardice. I spent 50 years building an empire on other people's backs. I convinced myself it was success.
It was theft.
You showed me what strength actually looks like. Not the kind that crushes. The kind that lifts. I've made arrangements. My lawyer has the documents. The estate, the company shares, everything. It's going where it should have gone years ago. To the people who built it. The workers. The artisans. The ones I treated like tools. I know this will cause problems. Your mother will fight it. Cade will scream.
Let them.
You taught me that legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you leave better. I'm sorry I learned too late to tell you face to face. Dad. My hands shook. I read it 3 more times, searching for tricks, for loopholes, for the manipulation I'd learned to expect. But it was just honest. Painfully, impossibly honest. 2 weeks later, my father died in his sleep. No drama. No final speech. Just a quiet exit for a man who'd lived loud his entire life. The funeral was theater. People who'd never met him cried into handkerchiefs. Business partners gave speeches about his vision. My mother played the grieving widow with Academy Award precision. I stood in the back and felt nothing but tired. The real earthquake came at the will reading. The lawyer, a man named Peterson who'd worked with my father for decades, sat at the head of a conference table. My mother, Cade, a few cousins I barely knew, all arranged like an audience waiting for their cues. Peterson cleared his throat. Marcel Hale's estate, valued at approximately $18 million, has been designated for redistribution. My mother leaned forward. Redistributed how? The mansion will be sold. Proceeds will fund a community workshop for artisans and a scholarship program for architecture students from low-income backgrounds. Silence crashed through the room. What about us? Cade's voice pitched high. What about his family? Peterson pulled out another document. Mr. Hale left personal funds for his immediate family. But the bulk of the estate, including all company assets, will be converted into a foundation supporting workers who are underpaid or exploited by Hale developments. My mother stood so fast her chair fell. This is insane. Dorian did this. He manipulated. I did nothing, I said quietly. He made this choice himself. Liar. She turned to the lawyer. We'll contest this. We'll fight it. Peterson looked at her with something like pity. The documents are ironclad, Mrs. Hale. Your husband spent months working with 3 different law firms to ensure they couldn't be challenged. Cade's face went purple. You destroyed our name. Everything we had. Everything he stole, I interrupted. He was trying to give it back. My mother lunged toward me. Security stepped between us. You've ruined us, she hissed. I looked at her, really looked, and saw nothing but emptiness dressed in expensive clothes. No, I said. I've rebuilt what you buried. What would you do if your inheritance was knowing you'd done the right thing? The mansion sold in 3 weeks. 18 million became real resources for real people. I oversaw the conversion personally. Worked with architects, contractors, community leaders to turn that monument to greed into something breathing and useful. The workshop opened 6 months later. 60,000 square feet of space for woodworkers, metalworkers, designers, artists. Equipment purchased new. Classes offered free. Apprenticeships that paid living wages. At the ribbon cutting, an older mason I'd worked with years ago stood beside me, hands rough from decades of labor. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I know," I replied. "But I wanted to." He gripped my shoulder. "Your father never learned our names. You learned them before you learned what we could do for you." That difference, that small, crucial difference, was everything. The scholarship program launched the same month. Full tuition, supplies, and living stipends for 20 students a year. Kids from neighborhoods my parents had ignored. Kids who saw buildings as possibilities, not just backdrops for their ambition. My mother stopped speaking to me entirely. Moved to Florida. Sent bitter emails I deleted without reading. Cade tried to sue. Claimed I'd coerced my father, manipulated the will, stolen his birthright. The case died in preliminary hearings. Turned out you can't contest documents that were witnessed by 6 lawyers and a notary. He gave interviews painting himself as the victim. "My brother destroyed our family," he said on local news, voice breaking on cue. But in the neighborhoods where we'd built playgrounds and fixed roofs and hired fairly, people knew different. One evening, I got a letter from a young woman named Sophie. She'd received one of the scholarships. My mother cleaned houses for 20 years. She told me architecture was for rich kids, not us. "Your program gave me a desk, tools, and permission to dream. Thank you." I put that letter on my desk next to the blueprint of the community workshop. Those 2 pieces of paper were worth more than any inheritance. A year after my father died, I stood on the roof of the new community center watching the sun set over the city. Below me, apprentices hammered and measured and laughed. The sound of creation. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Mr. Hale? This is Angela from Channel 7. We're doing a story on the Hale Foundation. Would you be willing to comment?" "No," I said. "Talk to the workers. Talk to the students. They're the story." She paused. "That's unusual." "Good," I replied and hung up. Because quiet justice doesn't need cameras. It needs consistency. It needs showing up when no one's watching and doing right because it's right, not because it gets you applause. Would you rather be famous for taking or remembered for giving? 3 years later, the community workshop hummed with a life my father's mansion never had. I visited on Tuesdays not as an owner but as someone who wanted to see what he'd helped create. Watched teenagers learn to weld. Saw single mothers take woodworking classes after their shifts. Met immigrants who'd been told they'd never make it now building furniture that sold across the state. The sign above the entrance read, "Built by hands, shared by hearts." No mention of Hale. No bronze plaques with my name. Just a promise kept. My mother came once. Didn't announce herself. Just showed up carrying a box of pastries for the break room. Set them down without a word and left. She came back the next month. Then the next. Never said she was wrong. Never apologized. But presence is its own language and slowly, painfully slowly, she learned to speak it. Cade moved to Oregon. Opened a small cafe that paid its workers $15 an hour and offered health insurance. I heard about it through the mason with the rough hands, who'd heard it from someone who'd heard it from Cade's ex-wife. I didn't gloat. Didn't call. Just felt something like hope that maybe the lesson had finally landed. One Tuesday evening, a teenage girl approached me. She wore paint-stained overalls and nervous energy. "Mr. Hale?"
"I'm Emma."
"I got one of the scholarships." "How's it going?" I asked. "Amazing. I'm designing a community library for my final project. But I wanted to tell you something." I waited. "My prom dress?" I bought it with my first paycheck from the apprenticeship program. It cost $200 and I earned every penny. My chest tightened. What did it feel like?
She grinned.
like it was actually mine. I thought about that $4,300 dress that had started everything, the demand that had cracked open a lifetime of using people as props. Then I finally paid for the right one, I said quietly. She looked confused, but I just smiled, because that's the thing about quiet justice. The victory isn't loud. It doesn't trend. It doesn't get you applause. It's a teenager buying her own dress, a mason whose kids go to college, a mother learning to woodwork, an empire of greed converted into a foundation of care. I walked home that evening through streets I'd helped rebuild, past apartments with functioning heat, past playgrounds that wouldn't collapse, past faces that knew me not as a name, but as someone who'd shown up and done the work. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. The pastries were good today. Same time next month. I smiled. Typed back. Yes. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's 1,000 small moments strung together like lights on a wire. Each one barely visible alone, but together they illuminate something new. That night, I sat on my balcony with coffee and silence. No regrets. No bitterness. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd chosen right when choosing was hardest. My father once told me people are transactions. He was wrong. People are possibilities. And the best thing you can build isn't a building at all. It's a chance.
A choice.
A door left open for someone who thought all doors were locked. $4,300 bought my freedom. I used it to buy other people's dignity. That's the trade I'll take every time. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We share real stories about real choices every week. Drop a comment telling us what you would have done in Dorian's place. Your story might inspire someone who needs to hear it. See you in the next one.